there has been a bit less enthusiasm coming from Russia of late when it comes to US-Russia talks because of the situation with flirting with sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine that Trump has done. Here is what Sergei Ryabkov, the deputy foreign minister, said recently. He said, "I would say this is a very serious escalatory step referring to the Tomahawk missiles. Indeed, the appearance of such systems, if it comes to that, would signify a substantial, one could even use the term qualitative change in the situation, but this will not affect our determination to achieve the set goals." There have been comments from other lawmakers, Putin. They've all said that this would be a serious escalation. You know, the momentum, according to Ryabkov, of the Alaska summit has waned. What exactly is going on here when it comes to this conflict? Why is it, too, that we also see a lot of enthusiasm coming out of the Western mainstream media? A lot of, oh, well, now Ukraine can push Russia back. Now Ukraine is in the driver's seat. Help dispel all of this for us.
Well, first of all, you said other lawmakers, and then you mentioned Vladimir Putin's name. He's not an other lawmaker. He's the president of the Russian Federation. And, basically, while, he consults and takes advice, it's his word that matters more than any other word. And pretty much what Ryabkov said was exactly what Vladimir Putin said during his presentation at Valdai. And just to go ahead and reinforce the point that it's the president's word that counts. Ryabkov may have declared Alaska dead. Ushakov just came out in the last hour and said, no, Alaska is alive and well and living, very much alive. And that Trump and Putin continue to talk. Ray and I have been going back and forth. You guys haven't seen it, about the Tomahawk missiles and things of that nature. I am more of a literalist, meaning that when I hear a president say, I have made a decision to send Tomahawks, I'm like, well, I guess the president made a decision to send Tomahawks. And, when I hear people talking about, the consequences, I say, well, perception creates its own reality. The perception of the president ready to send Tomahawks creates a reality in Russia, back and forth. But Ray, and ever the wise man, says, well, we sort of need to deal with reality here. Can they send Tomahawks? I mean, it's one thing, Scott Ritter has been saying, as my wife will tell you, not so much recently, but I would every summer, at the end of summer, honey, this is it. This is the year. I'm going to train hard. We're going to save the money, and I'm climbing Mount Everest in May. I'm going on an Everest expedition. I mean, that was my dream, to do that, get physically fit enough to do that and all that. And but me saying I wanted to go Mount Everest didn't make it happen, because there were many things that had to happen that weren't going to happen, and therefore I was never going to get on the top of Mount Everest. And Ray's probably right. Tomahawks will never be delivered to Ukraine because there's just so many things that have to happen. And if you listen to what Ushakov said, I think Ray's even more right. Again, I'm not going to be dismissive of it. I'm somebody who believes that just the mere threat of sending Tomahawks is a destabilizing move, and it's best that we not threaten in that manner. But, Trump likes to stir up the pot and create pressure and things of that nature. And the pressure about the Tomahawk, it cuts two ways. I mean, it's not just about a threat to Russia, but it's also a signal to Ukraine and Europe about their collective impotence. Because if they're putting so much hope on a weapon that can never be delivered, it means that there is no hope at all. And Trump needs to drive that point home. And I think that point has been driven home decisively, which is why suddenly Ushakov is coming out saying, no, we're talking. Everything's cool. No, Alaska, on track. We're moving towards to peace. I think the whole Tomahawk thing was just smoke and mirrors. I think it's just Donald Trump going in, stirring up the pot, seeing where things go. And the pressure wasn't designed to be put on Russia, which is one of the reasons why Putin sort of low-keyed it. I mean, he made the obvious statements. Yeah, if you do this, we got light at the end of the tunnel, but, that'll shut down. But you didn't see Putin, get serious face, pound the table, threaten, lash out. Putin was like, it's an old system. We're familiar with it. We could shoot it down, and calm. That implies that Putin knows something we didn't know. And apparently what we did know is that there's ongoing conversations. Normally when Putin and Trump speak, it's a big deal. I think now they've gone into the quiet mode. I think Trump is in the business of walking away from Ukraine. I think Trump's in the business of making sure that Ukraine and Europe understand the consequences of this and the lack of viability of any other option other than coming to terms with Russia that are acceptable to Russia. And that's the direction we're heading. Ushakov's statement makes it appear to be just that. And then, of course, Kirill Dmitriev, who, he's this guy who, has been working with Steve Witkoff. He's been at all these meetings. He's a confidant of Putin. And he's just been this cheerleader. I'm watching the world go to hell. And then I'm following Kirill Dmitriev and I'm going, dude is just tweeting positive stuff. I mean, and I'm like, is he on cocaine? What's going on? Well, apparently Kirill knew things I didn't know, like Putin and Trump are talking. And Kirill's just standing there going, it's all okay. Don't worry about it. World coming in. Nah, it's all right. Putin and Trump are talking. He didn't say that, but the implication was everything's going to be okay. And Ushakov's statement implied, I think that's the direction we're heading here. Trump had to get himself out of a hole that he dug himself into about being able to end the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. He needed Europe to wake up to the reality. He couldn't have 7 people flooding the Oval Office every time he made a move on Ukraine. He needed the Europeans to wake up and go, it's hopeless. I mean, look at Macron. I mean, he may not be around much longer. The Brits, they're a joke. Germany, a basket case. Kallas finally woke up and realized that after Trump told Zelensky, he saw Zelensky's face, hey, why don't you take back the 1991 borders? Really? And while you're at it, take Moscow. Oh, Trump's my friend. And then he went to the press. Trump's listening to me. He's listening to what I said. And he believes what I say. And we're going to do all. It's going to be great. And Kallas came out and went, what I heard was that Trump just washed his hands of Ukraine and has walked away. And he's put all the burden on Europe. And we can't do this. We can't do this. And that's the reality that came in. I'll leave it at that because I've droned on. So I'll make sure next time I talk, I bring up something very important that happened this last week. I mean, game-changingly important that actually contributes to this talk. But I see Trump. I don't see all gloom and doom right now. I think we're being gamed, and Ray called it. I mean, Ray, kudos to you, man. You called it. You said this is a game. This Tomahawk thing's not real. It's a game. And it appears that this Tomahawk thing's not real. It's been a game.
The Telegraph says Ukraine prepares for delivery of Tomahawk missiles. They can't fire. They're supposed to be leverage, but it could take months, and they might never leave their launchers because they have nothing to shoot them with.
Well, Major Ritter, I salute you for acknowledging our conversations and for listening and for also contributing greatly. Captain McGovern signing off. Now, in all seriousness, serious intelligence analysts compare notes, okay? They don't go off half-cocked. And the really good ones listen. So we've had this dialogue, and increasingly over the last couple of days, it seemed that this is really a canard, a red herring. It'll play out both. Well, the important thing is the Russians keep speaking in the subjunctive mood, okay? If, you have Lavrov, you have Ryabkov, you got Putin himself. If it's all very conditional, and Lavrov 5 days ago said, "Look, it's my information that a decision has been made yet." So, and then you have Zakharova, Maria Zakharova, the presidential spokeswoman, saying, I don't know about this guy Kellogg. I mean, doesn't he work for the president? I mean, isn't he subservient to? Doesn't he abide by the policy that's been set? We're set on progress and peace. What's going on here? So it's very clear. Now, I'm going to suggest something very unusual, and that is that Trump is following Marxist-Leninist slogans here. Lenin said famously, "Revoluция проходит zigzagami." Zigzagami, got zigzag, okay? The revolution proceeds with zigzags. And so this is the way rhetoric started in Russia, and the way it is today. Trump will say one thing one day, he'll say another thing the other day. That's why we had to wait at least 3 days or 4 days to figure out if this was real. Now, the real thing is that the Tomahawks are not real. The other real thing is that Putin is waiting for an official statement from Trump as to whether Trump will agree to his proposal, Putin's proposal, to have a kind of moratorium on further development, something that would approach the same limits as the START Treaty, which cannot be renewed, expires on the 5th of February. Now, one of the most interesting things that Ryabkov said yesterday in that interview was the following. Russia does not associate the issue of Tomahawk deliveries to Kiev with the new START proposal toward the U.S. Quote, these are two separate matters, end quote. That's good, okay? So one is a red herring, the other one is damn real, okay? Now, will Trump be able to be sensible and say, all right, look, we know you guys make a lot of money there by developing new missiles. We're going to keep this cap on the strategic missiles, so we're going to keep it for another year. Will he be strong enough to do that? Well, my guess is he will be. He'll face lots of opposition, but I think he will be. And if that happens, this is a major step forward. Then other things can get done. Ryabkov bemoaned the fact that, yeah, we have contact sometimes every day, but nothing gets done. There's not even an agreement on when we meet together to discuss bilateral relations and how to improve them, how to deal with Russian assets being seized in the United States under Obama. What about airlines and all that kind of stuff? So what Ryabkov is saying that is, look, we have an edifice that has been built here. Zakharov says it's just at the nascent, just the beginning, and then he says, well, it's cracking. Says Ryabkov, it's cracking and it's collapsing, and right out front, the Americans are to blame for this. The Europeans are to blame for the stuff in Ukraine, but the Americans are to blame. So this is Ryabkov. The cracks have now reached the foundation. So you have a zig. He says, look, we're getting to the point where we're not going to be diddled anymore on Ukraine or anything else, but please take us seriously on New START. And then you have Ushakov, who's the closest to Putin on this. He's his right-hand person on strategic arms and lower or intermediate nuclear forces. He's saying, no, look, Ryabkov is just saying we really like to get started. We're going ahead here with pursuing the agreements reached in Alaska, and that's big because before there were no contacts. At least there are contacts now. If the balloon goes up in Iran or Israel, there will be contacts. Lavrov will get through to what's the guy's name, Rubio, as he was unable to get through to Blinken or Sullivan. And that's a big deal. And the summit has happened. Now, the outstanding invitation, last thing I'll say here, the Russians have been saying this repeatedly over the last 2 weeks. Look, we still hope that Trump will come to visit Moscow for the next summit. Now, there's an alternative there, and let me suggest it on air. Putin could say, look, let's just 5 of you come to Sochi. Come to Sochi and we'll have sort of an informal discussion, 5 on our side, 5 on your side, and you'll see Sochi. Sochi's not a backwater place out there. You'll see what Sochi is now, and we'll get together. And so that's my notion about what might happen next. Nothing real formal, but something that gets Trump to Russia and lets him see for himself not only Moscow, but the rest of the country, and have serious talks in a more discursive, a more relaxed manner over some vodka or over Diet Coke and vodka in Sochi. My recommendation, in case any of you at the White House are listening.
There's a whole range of voices about this Tomahawk issue in particular. Andrei Kartapalov said, he's the head of Russia's parliament's defense committee, our response would be tough, ambiguous, measured, and asymmetrical. We will find ways to hurt those who cause us trouble. How much of this desperation around throwing around weapons, keeping the conflict going, especially on the part of NATO, how much of this signals things aren't going very well right now? I look at the mainstream media and all I see is Ukraine's hit this, Ukraine's hit that, Ukraine is in the driver's seat. But this behavior seems to indicate something a little different. What's going on here?
Well, this is a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about. Since the special military operation began, outside observers, analysts like myself have been confounded by why Russia allows NATO to send weapons into Ukraine unmolested. Why does Russia allow Lvov and other Western Ukrainian cities to become, sort of a holding ground for not just weapons, but lately weapons production capabilities? Factories are being built. And why aren't they bombing it? And then the question comes up, does Russia really have as much control over Ukrainian airspace as, we've been led to believe? It sounds to me like, Ukraine has built a protective umbrella of integrated air defense. Why are F-16s able to operate out of Western Ukraine? Aren't these things supposed to have been destroyed on day one by the vaunted Russian military? And it's one of those questions that just couldn't be answered. I mean, the answer was, well, maybe Russia's not as good as we thought they were. Maybe the Patriot's better than we thought it was. I don't think that could be the case, but who knows? And that's, that seemed to be the direction, which then points to the potential of a long-term conflict, which is the exact opposite of the strategic direction that Russia wants to go. Russia's not looking to have a forever war. Russia wants this war to end on terms favorable to Russia. But if Russia allowing NATO to install defense industrial capacity in Western Ukraine and to bring weapons in and stockpile them, warehouse them there so they can keep feeding them into the front, that lends itself to another conclusion. And then the answer came this week, and it just blinding flash of the obvious. What Russia did was create the perception of a safe haven in Western Ukraine. See, if Russia had acted decisively early on, these warehouses, these defense industrial facilities would have been built in NATO, as they were early on. They were doing the rehab facilities. Everything was being done in NATO, and that's untouchable. It gives Ukraine this strategic depth. But NATO is seeking to push this stuff into Ukraine. But in order to do that, you have to create the perception that Western Ukraine is strategic depth for Ukraine. And then the West deposited hundreds of billions of dollars worth of resources, weapons, warehouses, facilities, defense industrial facilities, the whole thing jammed into the West. And now it's this capability that the British in their Keep Ukraine in the Fight are emphasizing. This has now made it easy. All NATO has to do is provide the money, and they can rapidly ship weapons into the holding cells in Western Ukraine, and this war can go on forever. We can keep Ukraine in the fight. Except last week, Russia took them out. Russia came in and said, you guys thought that the Patriots in Western Ukraine had a 60% intercept rate? Try 6. And they just blew up these facilities, and they're going to continue to blow them up. All that investment is gone. And now you see the desperate. The day that happened, did you see what Zelensky did? After saying, we're going to strike Russia deep, we're doing that, he said, I need a ceasefire in the air right now. Because he just woke up and said, I lost everything. And NATO can't replicate that. There isn't a plan B. There's no NATO facilities that can replace this. They're gone. And this is the reality that Europe's waking up to right now, that there ain't nothing they can do about this. Russia just dramatically changed the calculus of this game, which is why all of a sudden Ushkakov's like, yeah, we're talking. I think there's going to be a peace deal. Well, why? Because Europe doesn't have any cards left. Trump dumped everything on Europe. Europe's plan was predicated on being able to transfer weapons to a Western Ukrainian safe haven and have defense industry work that up in there. That's gone. Europe has no plan B. And they're all sitting there just swinging in the wind right now. And Russia's like, yeah, that northern Pokrovsk offensive you guys did, it's over. We won. You're all dead. And we've resumed the offensive there. The drone wall you built, all the drone operators that operate, they're dead. We killed them all. And we've reasserted drone dominance. Sumi, you guys fought us to us. Oh, last time I checked, we're advancing south there. We're advancing everywhere. You run out of men. Your strategic reserve died north of Pokrovsk. Pokrovsk is getting ready to fall. Kupiansk is getting ready to fall. This is the reality. And I think what you're going to see is that Trump is going to go to the Europeans and go to the Ukrainians and say, I've washed my hands of this. You're on your own. It ain't going so well, is it? Tomahawks? Oh, yeah, you'll get the Tomahawk. 2028, 2029, 2030, maybe we'll give you 3, 4, 5 of them. But don't worry, you'll get them, but you won't be alive because you're dying right now. It's over. Energy killed. The winter is going to suck. And I think what we're seeing right now is Trump's played a game. And Clay Collas caught on. I mean, you should have seen. Did you watch that interview when she came to the microphone? This woman who says, my job is to dismantle Russia, to make Putin lick my boots and the whole world. She came and Zelensky's out there doing a dance about how, Trump loves him. He loves me. He loves me. No, he doesn't. She said, Trump just washed his hands of you and he put all the burden on us and we can't do it. And this is back when she thought she had a Western Ukrainian enclave. It's gone, wiped out. That's why I think you're seeing this new air of optimism out of Moscow, and they're not cocky about it. The Russians aren't running around doing a victory dance. Very measured words, but Ushkov's statement says everything. Ryabkov came out, sort of hinted that, all the momentum out of Alaska's gone, and Ushkov's like, we're talking. Everything's cool. Don't worry about it. I'm optimistic because ain't nothing going Europe's way, ain't nothing going Ukraine's way, and everything's going Russia's way. Well, Scott, what about the blown up refineries? You never did anything in war, did you? You've never fought a war in your life? Because if you think that a war is 100% one way, it isn't. But the Ukrainians aren't doing strategic damage to Russia. What about the lines of cars at gas stations? Ain't happening. What about, all the bad stuff? Ain't happening. Look, I'm going to Moscow next week. I'm confident the Moscow Odyssey will be a thriving metropolis, just like the Moscow that Ray saw in May, populated by people that, are concerned about the war. You would be inhuman not to be, but who aren't losing sleep over it, who don't believe, you can have, Gilbert Doctorow come on and talk all at once about, the whispering class, the elites, the politically inclined, and they want Putin gone. Never in the history of the world has there been a coup effort against a leader who enjoys 80% approval rating. Vladimir Putin is the most popular president in Russian history for a reason, because he's kicking ass across the board. Russia's back. They've learned to fall in love with Russia again. They're proud of who they are. They're proud of the direction they're going. They are proud of what they have accomplished, and they have confidence in their army to continue this fight. And the other people that say that there's a split between the general staff and Putin don't know what the general staff is and doesn't understand who Vladimir Putin is. There's no split between these two men. They're on the same page. The proof is in exactly what's happening right now. A confluence of military action and diplomatic action leading to the result that Vladimir Putin said will always be from day one of this conflict, a war that ends on terms dictated by Russia that are acceptable to Russia.